little bit of spelling play in this one. So the first part is called Venezia. So that's Venice, but it's spelled with two N's, which is wrong. Welcome to Pez World, such grand indifference to life and feeling, end quote, ranting from column. Dispense yourself, open wide, and have a good one. Coulter, the enforcer. I'm on sale too, you. And today, writing present to myself, made in the image of owned chiseltude. The Ayn Rand architect special, minus architect. My lowest offer yet. Common taste in organs of my face work for you. And I do work you just. Consider the meaning of you. Plays the place to come. Benzedrine, fountainhead bomb. Champ ions on. In onions. Ice off. Office eye. Sores. Look at the misstep. I.e. landscape. Borrowing cape for this one who is pollinating entire province by hand. To make a bee line rich, mush head and flush. It's the convenience. Semiotic complaints. For him, a semiotic constraints. So the title of his essay is The Interaction of Semiotic Constraints. I believe that's it. Well, my poem's called The Interaction of Semiotic Complaints. But so him, the semiotic constraints, semiotic just means basically that everything's plus minus, good, bad, everything's sort of opposed to everything else. You need all these little opposing atoms to construct meaning. That's how we make meaning. So he comes up with this sort of this chart of meaning. I think what's interesting in it is position X, right? But I think in some sense, poetry world and current poetry world and what it excludes is in some ways embodied in this chart and also somewhat not embodied. So I've been emphasizing sort of readings of Lissa Wolfsack and Ken Bolton using sound, and there's a science of sound. We know there's modern linguistics, so it's inhabiting this corner of this chart, and it's the opposite. So this is the constraint on meaning, but the opposite of linguistics is what Susan Stewart calls anti-linguistics, and that's where Cooley would position the vernacular. So this is slang. This is the kind of lingo of the street, criminal jargon, and so on. It's our code language, right? It's an anti-linguistics to vocables like interjections and those kinds of things. Phatic, sort of like birds tweeting. That's a kind of anti-linguistics. So it's the opposite of linguistics. So Cooley's kind of like there, so that's minus A, if that's plus A. And then in contrast, so not contradiction, but in contrast to linguistics, we have the idea of a motivated sign. And that's really, that's a large part of poetry world. When a sign is motivated, it organizes, all its literary qualities in such a way that you think, when you hear the sound the short I sound, right? You think, oh, if there's a quality to that or a character to that sound. Hi, I'm Louis Cabri, and this is mondomedeusah. What did I do tonight? People may be wondering. I talked about what I call poetry world. What's in, what's out. That pretty much sums up my talk, Gallery 101, on Hallows Eve, 30th October 2010. What do I teach? Poetry, 20th century poetry, theory, literary theory, and creative writing. Okay.
teach creative writing. We have an undergrad program. We have a grad program. If you're interested in writing and you've never been to Windsor, come down, check out the city, take a couple of courses. You know, I pretty much started in the 80s doing this event here, the one that I did tonight. Was a series I started with a friend of mine, Vladimir. It's kind of, there's nothing like it. We just wanted to talk about poetry and art with other people. You know, there's no such thing as blogs then, or even the internet. So there were art galleries, but in art galleries, people talk about art, but not about writing, right, or poetry. So we wanted to start something. So we sort of concocted this idea of asking a poet to talk about their work by contextualizing it, so giving us a kind of reader's aid, right? And so the poet would cut and paste a bunch of quotations from different things they were reading, maybe some images as well, and there'd be no sort of coherent narrative that they would tell, right? You'd read these things, you have no idea how they connect. So as a reader, you kind of you imagine your own narrative for this collage of texts. And then you go to this event, you hear the poet read, and then afterwards it's kind of like a discussion that happens, and it's one that's kind of begun by people in the audience, right, who've read this newsletter and who have their own ideas about connections between the different quotations. So, so it's kind of like an equal sort of democratic space of conversation around poetry. So that's what we did. Well,